The Senate passes a record-breaking $858 billion defense bill, which I'm sure has some of the funding necessary to keep the government open, even beyond what the House may do coming up for the next term here. But we'll talk about that, what that means, and why I think that this is playing into some of the Dow dropping off as well. So we'll go over some of that and what we see from here. In other news, the National Archives is set to release more Hunter Biden emails out to the public, and the White House is actually not talking very much about it. So we'll be going over that and what that means and what possibly could be in the emails that may suck even more than what was already in the laptop from hell. Elon Musk suspends several journalists who are going over to Mastodon and other platforms to go talk more about where Elon Musk's jet is going. Banning people for off-site behavior and coming into, well, let's just come out and say it, a lot of the same old stuff that we saw from the old owners of Twitter. So I do have some mixed feelings about it because of my policy on doxing especially, but we'll talk about it and where we go from here and where we what happens there. And LaToya Cantrell shows that you cannot let your city fall into disrepair while you go on lavish vacations and not have your citizens come back and give you backlash over it. It is going to be all this and more. Plus, if you have live chat tonight, make sure that you get some of that in the chat today, because we'll be reading some in the live chat and going over the names of the people who chatted in the live chat over the past week as well. It is going to be all this and more. We are back, bitches. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Alright folks, confession time, and for the most part I think this is going to be going to the people who are going and watching back on the replay of this is a hard time slot, and I knew this coming into this. I was a little bit eager for the time slot because of the fact that I do now have the access to my West Coast audience as well, whereas most of them could for Contemporary could only really do the replays, but this is a hard time slot to do live because Timcast is going to be, I think they're on right now, so I'm going against Timcast, and it feels later too because it's dark out right now, but regardless, this really is the only time that I have available for this, but I know that there's going to be less chat, but I'm going to persevere through it. We're going to stick with it. We are going to hang with it because I love doing this every day. I love reading the news out and making videos and making content for people. That's really one of the big joys of my life, and I like the idea of making a news program by the common man for the common man. But I'm looking at the names list and I'm like, wow, this is actually getting to be a little bit difficult. But let's not be discouraged, let's not despair, and let's go over some of the news of the day. Before we do, make sure we go check out great programming such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Porch Boys. Go check out if you're on Twitter, Tweets by Brit, or if you're on YouTube and you like true crime, go check out Overruled with KTZed. Mr. Behavior, who is about to be a father, by the way. He just made his announcement on Twitter, which I'm very excited for him. PJ Patriot and the No Gimmicks podcast. Go check out all that great programming because these are great people who sit here and put the time and effort out there because it is important to give you news from the common man for the common man. That is right. All the time you get these news from people who wear suits that cost more than your house, and it's it's not there. These people have never had to make the same decisions you have, so I probably have. So let's sit down and let's see why this should be important for the common man and what we should be looking into when we see some of these big news stories. So go and check all of them out. We are going to start tonight with the finance as we always do. So let's look at what happened out on the Dow today. Looking at the Dow was at 32,920.46. That's right, it puked off another almost 300 points today. Actually puked off a lot more than that, but it was able to recover a little bit towards the end of the day because people are looking at this and they're seeing a recession. And really, honestly, it was kind of a dark of the night thing when the Senate came out and passed the $858 billion defense budget bill. Defense budget. I say that with a little bit of a grain of salt because there's no budget there. This is just freewheeling money that they have out there. So, and that is going to affect what's going to be happening with inflation and what the Federal Reserve does. One of the things that I wish would happen is that the Federal Reserve would come out and keep hiking these prices and making people more miserable. And the government would look at this and say, okay, well, we have to come back and stop some of the spending here. But especially on the military side, that's never, ever, ever going to wait. And more money has been printed in the last 3 years than in the history of the US dollar. So that is what we see coming off of that. And it's going to be a hard time. I mean, there are going to be hard times coming up here. I am hoping that because of work ethic, my move and my new job, this will enable me to come back out and sweep up a nice new house in a room that does not echo. Yes, we're looking to get into that hopefully by spring, although there are some possibilities out there and it might actually be happening before that. To get a couple things taken care of and actually get some money back in the bank again. A little bit of going from a weekly paycheck to a bi-weekly paycheck was a little bit of a shock to the system here, but we're going to be just fine here. So come in and hang out and go check. We'll check out what's happening with the economy and what happens there. Let's look at Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is at 16,573.60 US dollars. That is down 785 US dollars and 40 US cents on the day, or 4.52%. So even that's coming off of here as people are starting to put their assets into things that are more liquid. And, you know, you go out and you buy, and, you know, if you need the diapers, if you need the food, if you need the rent, if you need the gas, even though gas prices are coming down right now, this is not the time to be going into risky investments. And really, honestly, with the FTX thing too, I'm seeing a lot more sell-off coming off of that as well. For me, it's on sale. And I'm going to hold on to the little bit of Bitcoin that I have, along with the little bit of Shiba Inu that I have, and possibly going to get a little bit more. Well, it's really, really down here. I'm not going to go break the bank on it or take out a second mortgage to get some more Bitcoin, but I'd like to see if I can get a little bit of it here and maybe turn $40, $50 into $100. I think that'd be pretty cool. But again, it's not a retirement. It's not what I'm banking on, and that's what we see coming for that. Looking at the gas prices, which, as I mentioned, are coming down, we are looking at the Madison area once again. The quick trip coming into the Isthmus is at $2.80. That seems to be the high price around the Madison area. I thought that I saw $2.90 on here earlier. Yes, the Speedway coming across the Beltline is at $2.90. So 280 seems to be the benchmark, although we've got a 269, a 272, and a 279 as well. So definitely holding steady over the week, but definitely down from where we left off 2 weeks ago when Contemporary stopped being a morning show and became an evening show. So that's what we see coming for that. Let's see. Let's get started into...
Let me ask you a little bit about what we were just talking about with the market, that maybe
I didn't archive
this
that.
is a reflection that...
Well, that's probably not going to work now, so we'll move on and we'll see what's happening from Yahoo. Here's why the Dow dropped nearly 800 points on Thursday. Its worst day since September. So starting off talking about what happened yesterday with this from Stephen Garner. Stocks fell sharply on Thursday after new data released today showed that the retail sales slowed in November. The declines also came one day after the Federal Reserve rose interest rates to a 15-year high. As of the closing bell on Thursday, the Dow Industrial Average fell 764.13 points, or 2.25% to 33,202.74, its worst day since September. The S&P 500 dropped 2.49% to 38,95.82, and the Nasdaq tumbled 3.25% to 10,810.53. There is some danger with the Nasdaq that actually could drop down to four-digit levels once again. We'll see what happens with that. Footwear companies also felt the pain on Thursday. Adidas was down 4.17% at the closing bell, while Shoe Carnival fell 9.13% and Nike dipped 2.64%. Amazon also took a 3.42 hit, while Foot Locker dropped 3.79% and Deckers fell 3.18%. And that's one of the things that we see with the economy. And it's part of the reason that I looked around and said, I can't make it on the money that I'm making it anymore. And the reason that I moved is because I've got a pair of Nikes that are still from pre-Kaepernick that are completely falling apart. And I looked at actually going in and replacing them. That's, it's starting to replace things that are worn out. That's really starting to get me thinking that it's time to go back and make a move and do something different with my life right now, because, the last time you bought shoes, you spent $15 on them, and now they're $50 for a pair. Something's got to give at this point. That something has got to change, so that's what we see for that. Tires, $500 for a set of 8-ply taller truck tires with 18-inch rims in 2020 when we started out. Now over $1,200 for that same set of tires. And they're getting to the point where they're worn out, so you got to do something with them. But when you start to see, people will make do with what they have for as long as they can. People aren't going out to buy the shoes, the TV, the luxury items. They're going out to buy food and hoping they can continue to make rent. So that's what we see for that. Thursday's sell-off was due in part to the U.S. Census Bureau's monthly retail report, which showed sales slowed in November, suggesting inflation is taking a toll on consumers' wallets during the busiest shopping season of the year. Total U.S. retail sales were $689.4 billion in November. According to the report, this total was down 0.6 from October, but up 6.5 from the same month in 2021. This compares with the 8.3% year-over-year growth in October and the 8.2% yearly increase in September. But investors began cashing in stocks after the Federal Reserve continued its battle to tamp down inflation on Wednesday. The central bank boosted the overnight borrowing rate half a percentage point, taking it to a targeted range between 4.25 and 4.5, after 4 consecutive months of 3/4 point hikes. Inflation data received so far for October and November show a welcome reduction in the monthly pace of price increases, the chair said at his post-meeting news conference, but it will take substantially more evidence to have confidence that inflation is on a sustained downward path. Inflation is indeed slowing. Consumer prices rose by 7.1% in November compared to last year, according to a report from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. This marked the smallest 12-month increase since the period ending in December 2021 and a slowdown from October's 7.7% growth. On Tuesday, President Biden called this week's inflation report welcome news and a reason for some optimism for the holiday season. In a world where inflation is rising at double digits in many major economies around the world, inflation is coming down in America, President Biden said. As for the holiday season, the National Retail Federation is predicting sales to grow, though at a slower rate than last year. Total sales between November 1st and December 31st are expected to grow between 6% and 8% compared to 2021, representing a total of between $942.6 billion and $960.4 billion in sales, on top of last year's record-breaking 13.5% growth to $889.3 billion. So, some things that are moving here. I'm really sorry to say, but I do think that this is a very optimistic view on what could possibly happen for this. I don't see this kind of volume coming up in sales growth. In fact, I think that it's going to be a bit of a sadder Christmas for a few people. Now, if I'd have been able to make the move that I was looking at a month earlier, this would be a very happy Christmas right now. In fact, we'd be looking at very, very, very amazing Christmas gifts because I took a very, very big pay raise to come back and make this move. But realistically, people are opening up their wallets and looking and saying, I see butterflies right now. What do? Do I make sure the kids have food, or do I try to get them the most expensive toy of the year? And a lot of people are not going down the latter path. So that's what we see coming up of that. Let's grab the one from Fox Business that I had put up earlier, but I had not archived. From Fox Business, Dow nosedives as traders continue sell-off on Fed hike. From Joe Toppy, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is nosediving again on Friday, shedding over 500 points following another Federal Reserve decision to hike interest rates. On Wednesday, the central bank announced it would continue boosting rates to control inflation, raising interest rates another 50 points after hiking rates by 75 points 4 previous times this year. The Fed statement sent Wall Street into a sell-off as U.S. stocks erased gains made to start the week. On Friday, the key blue chips like Boeing, American Express, Johnson & Johnson, Caterpillar, United Healthcare, and Coca-Cola were all beneath the red line, with Verizon leading the fall at approximately 2.4% in negative territory. As of 12:55 p.m., the Dow was approximately 1.59%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq and S&P were off nearly 1.49% and 1.67% respectively. The rate hike will bring the federal funds rate between 4.25% and 4.5% to cool inflation, posting its highest level in 15 years. The BOLS reported a 0.1% monthly increase in inflation for November on Tuesday, beating analysts' expectations of a 0.3% spike in consumer prices as U.S. stocks rebounded until the Fed announcement. And again, there are some things to look at with this, of what's going on around us. Look at the spending. They didn't learn their lesson. That's one thing I can say for positive, is the government, the Republicans, the Democrats in Congress didn't learn their lesson from the people who are struggling and begging them to do something about the inflation right now. And the Federal Reserve's idea is that we need to keep the consumers out of the market to keep the velocity of the cash down in order to try to correct some of the spending here, because the government's not going to stop. They've already got big grants set out to go to Ukraine. They've already got big military pay raises, which hopefully will do something for the economy at least. But there's a huge amount of things to consider when we look into this. And again, they're just going to keep spending. They're going to keep writing that check. And the Federal Reserve will try to keep you out of the market. And let's talk about that for just a moment here. From Reuters, the U.S. Senate passes a record $858 billion defense bill, sends bill to Biden. From Patricia Zengurli, the U.S. Senate passed a bill for a record $858 billion defense budget next year on Thursday, with strong bipartisan support authorizing $45 billion, more than proposed by President Biden. Senators supported the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, an annual must-pass bill setting policy for the Pentagon, by an overwhelming 83-11 vote. With the House having passed the measure last week, the NDAA next heads to the White House, where Biden is expected to quickly sign it into law. The fiscal 2023 NDAA authorizes $858 billion in military spending and includes a 4.6% pay increase for the troops, funding for purchases of weapons, ships, and aircraft, and support for Taiwan as it faces aggression from China, and for Ukraine as it fights an invasion from Russia. So, right off the bat, right in the beginning, the first thing that we're seeing here is a giveaway to another country. 2 other countries. We need to prioritize defense. It's as simple as that, said Senator Jim Inhofe, the top Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee, in urging support for the bill. Inhofe is retiring from Congress, and this year's NDAA is named after him. Yeah, again, we didn't learn any of our lessons from this. From all the years of inflation, we learned nothing from this. And it's not about defense, even at this point. It is about world police. It's about defending others. The vote meant Congress has passed the NDAA every year since 1961. And that is part of the problem. Because it's one of the few major bills that always passes, lawmakers use the NDAA as a vehicle for a range of initiatives. This year's measure came after months of negotiations between Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate. The fiscal 2023 NDAA includes a provision demanded by many Republicans in Congress, as opposed by many Democrats, requiring the Secretary of Defense to rescind a mandate requiring that members of the armed forces be vaccinated against the pinko pox. A bid to amend the bill to award back pay and reinstate troops who refused the vaccine failed. The bill provides Ukraine at least $800 million. So at least they've come off the B for billion, but that's going to change again, in additional security assistance next year, and includes a range of provisions to strengthen Taiwan amid tensions with China, including billions of dollars in security assistance and fast-tracked weapons procurement for Taiwan. And yet these same people are going to come back out here and tell you that there should be absolutely no chance that you, Mr. American citizen, do have the ability to have the weapons that defend yourself. The bill authorizes more funds to develop hypersonic weapons close to the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility in Hawaii, and purchase weapons systems including Lockheed Martin Corps, F-35 fighter jets, and ships made by General Dynamics. And how many of the people who voted for this have Lockheed Martin in their portfolio? The NDAA is not the final word in spending. Authorization bills create programs, but Congress must pass appropriations bills to give the government legal authority to spend federal money. A bill to fund the government through September 30th, 2023, the end of the fiscal year, is expected to pass Congress next week. Because of course it is. Because they didn't do what they were told to do before the election, when we were all of a sudden about to go run out of money. The idea was to make your omnibus go into January, so this Congress had no chance to go in and touch the budget once again. And what did they do? They pushed it out to the middle of December, so that now they have a whole year of spending that Democrats can go put their name to almost unopposed. And you wonder why the dollars are inflated so hard. I'm going to go over this one from CNN for just a bit. We're going to skip around on this one a bit because Reuters actually covered quite a bit of what's in this bill already, but I want to see if there's anything new that we didn't see in Reuters here. CNN writes headline, "Here's what's in the $858 billion defense bill." From Tammy Luby. Congress has passed a bipartisan $858 billion defense bill that would give service members a hefty pay raise, bolster support for Ukraine and Taiwan, and rescind the U.S. military's pinko pox vaccine mandate. So there actually is something good in here. The legislation now goes to President Biden for his signature. Stamp, rubber stamp, check mark. The White House views the removal of the mandate as a mistake, Press Secretary Token Diversity hire said on Monday. But she declined to say whether Biden would sign a bill that ends the requirement, noting that the president will judge the bill in its entirety. The defense bill outlines the policy agenda for the Department of Defense and the U.S. military and authorizes spending in line with Pentagon's priorities, but it does not appropriate the funding itself. No, your taxes do that. The must-pass legislation, which would authorize $817 billion specifically for the Department of Defense, would provide $45 billion more than Biden's budget request earlier this year. The increase for fiscal year 2023 is intended to address the effects of inflation and accelerate the implementation of the National Defense Strategy. According to the Senate Armed Services Committee, it would authorize $12.6 billion for the inflation impact on purchases. Okay, that covers $12.6 billion, but we are still looking at $840, let's say $45 billion. That's not inflation impact. $3.8 billion for the impact on military construction projects and $2.5 billion for the impact on fuel purchases. That's still less than $20 billion. According to a bill summary from the committee, the NDAA also includes provisions to strengthen air power and land warfare defense capabilities, as well as cybersecurity. Alright, let's look at what's in here. Support for service members and their families. The bill would provide a 4.6% increase in military basic pay for all service members, the largest in 20 years. and it doesn't keep up with inflation. The Department of Defense's civilian workforce would get the same raise, and it doesn't keep pace with inflation. It would also bump service members' housing allowance by 2% and require a report on a more transparent, fair, and flexible way to calculate the basic allowance for housing, according to a summary from the House Armed Services Committee. The legislation would also increase the eligibility threshold for the basic needs allowance, a new supplemental payment for low-income military families, to 150% of the federal poverty line, up from 130%. It would authorize the reimbursement of up to $4,000 per pet relocation expense. What? For pet relocation expenses stemming from permanent changes of station to or from locations outside the continental U.S. To address the issue of suicides among service members, the bill would require the Defense Secretary to compile a report of suicide rates by military occupational specialty, service, and grade. It would mandate the Defense Secretary brief the Congressional Armed Services Committee on the preliminary findings of the review no later than June 1st. Here's the one that we all knew was going to be in here: aid for Ukraine, i.e., a number of dollars in kickbacks going back into the hands and the pockets of congresspeople who have stock in Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Halliburton. The NDAA would extend and modify the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, as well as authorize $800 million in funding in fiscal year 2023, which isn't even close to what they're going to spend on Ukrainian funding, which is $500 million more than was contained in last year's defense bill, but far dwarfs what was given to them in between month over month. The funding authorization in the defense bill is intended to supplement additional money for the initiative expected in a future federal spending package, according to Rob Portman, an Ohio Republican who wrote the program into law in 2015. Also, the defense bill would expedite the delivery of munitions to Ukraine and the replenishment of associated U.S. stockpiles by streamlining acquisition requirements and authorizing multi-year procurement for certain munitions. According to the House Armed Services Committee, the authorization would also provide stocks of munition to U.S. allies and partners, as well as an increase in the number of munitions that would be needed if China takes action against Taiwan. Because of course they do. It would be the largest number of multi-year procurement contracts for munitions that the defense bill has authorized in recent years, if not ever. And I hope, with this being out there, take some time. This is not official financial advice, but go take some time and talk to your stockbroker and get yourself some defense contractor stock, because you're going to want that right about now. The end of the Pinko Pox mandate, which cost $0. So here we have $800 million. We'll call that $1 billion. $10 billion in military financing for the next 5 years, which is just going to be a throwaway at this point because they're not going to get that money back. An extra $2 billion in loan. We'll call that $12 billion. It would also give the president the authority to give Taiwan up to $1 billion in weapons and munitions. So let's call that $13 billion. And we'll round up on the Ukraine too. $800 million, we'll call that $1 billion. So we're at $14 billion. Let's see. So we're at $14 billion plus another $12.6 billion, which brings us to $26.6 billion, plus $3.8 billion brings us to $30.4 billion, and $2.5 billion brings us to $32.9 billion, $33 billion. And this is CNN telling you what's in this bill. And we rounded up a lot with that too. So $33 billion out of $858 billion. I think something's missing here, folks. But again, we're in the situation where they're not shy about going and spending this money, and when you ask about where this money's going, you get a big middle finger from people like this. So, there's the military spending bill that nobody knows where the rest of that money's going. Let's shift gears here. Let's talk about Biden. This is going to be a short one, by the way, tonight here. The news has been slow, I will admit. Most of the news is about Twitter at this point. Kanye's fallen out of the news. So this has all been quite slow this week. And we'll see if we can get some more people in here chatting, because again, we will be reading the live chat at the end of the show, because it's Friday, and it is my thank you to the people who did come by and chat in the live chat. I see Grant and Saint right now. But let's talk about the National Archives. White House in bind as archive nears release of Hunter Biden Burisma emails from Mark Moore. Pretty sure they've already been released. Also, I have no idea why my ad preferences got set to Spanish. It's been going on for a while. It happens on my phone too. I do speak some Spanish, but not enough. I am in no way fluent enough for me to be getting ads in Spanish. I'm in no way fluent enough for that. The Biden admin faces a difficult decision in early next year whether to block the National Archives from releasing hundreds of Obama-era documents related to the first son, Hunter Biden, and his relationship with the Ukrainian energy company Burisma while Joe Biden was vice president. Yeah, he's going to be taking his place firmly under the bus. After we saw the advertisement yesterday, "Don't run, Joe," this guy is going firmly and directly under the bus. We're going to have to ask him how those tire tracks feel. The White House has been mum about whether it will invoke executive privileges to stop the papers from becoming public. February 28, 2023, insider reports. Spoiler alert, yes, they will. But they won't do it until the last second. The records include 69 images and 260 email messages that mention Burisma and date back to 2014, when Hunter, now 52, had a lucrative seat on the company's board, a shady relationship the Post exposed in a series of reports in October of 2020, and Twitter subsequently suspended. The oldest newspaper in the country for. The National Archives informed Biden White House and the Obama Foundation in a November 30th letter that it planned to release the records in response to a Freedom of Information Act request for vice presidential records created between May and December of 2014 that contained the word Burisma, insiders said. I wonder who filed that. The letter said several of the emails involved the media inquiries after it was revealed in 2014 that Hunter would accept a seat on Burisma's board, where he was paid as much as $83,333 a month, even though he had no experience in energy issues. There's a lot of editorializing going this direction too, and I do have to call it out. If it's going one direction, when I call out CNN for doing the editorializing, I do have to call out the New York Post for doing it as well. The National Archives also said in a letter that another 22 emails were restricted without saying why. Draft documents that are part of the deliberative or policymaking process can be exempted. Such requests, along with information that would violate a person's privacy or expose trade secrets. Under the Presidential Records Act, the legal teams representing the Biden and Obama administrations until the end of February claim executive privilege before the emails are released. If they decide to do so, the emails could remain sealed until January of 2029 unless a court intervenes. Most transparent administration in history. Folks. The trove of emails could shed light on accusations by a number of Republican lawmakers that the president personally benefited from his son's foreign business dealings. Yeah, we know that already, though. Republicans have vowed to launch a series of investigations into the matter when they take control of the House next year. Jim Comer of Kentucky, the incoming chair of the House Oversight Committee, told the Post that Republicans are prepared to pursue prosecution of the Bidens, depending on what the investigations reveal about Hunter's relationship in Ukraine and China. If the evidence justifies it, then we will have criminal referrals, Comer told the Post last week. All right. I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler and a little bit of a black pill on this one. There are actually going to be absolutely zero indictments coming from this. None. Not one. Even though I agree that there should be. rich people, and politicians don't go to jail. And we're going to come to a point where we're going to start sitting here and hearing the same thing. Why are Republicans using the power of the DOJ, which is not going to do anything anyway, but why are they using the levers of government to go after political enemies? Which would be fair, because Republicans said the same thing about Trump. Mark Zaid, a national security lawyer who has represented several federal whistleblowers, told Insider that the legal grounds for the Biden admin to invoke executive privilege is shaky because many of the documents are already in the hands of a third party. So, what I don't understand here, excuse me, and this is the big one, this is the one that really surprises me, and I don't understand what happens with this. From what I understand from the National Archives, this is all the stuff that was in the laptop that we've all seen. The National Archives told Insider that the FOIA request was filed by America First Legal, a nonprofit group founded by former Trump admin official Stephen Miller. Along with the impending congressional probes, the Justice Department is examining Hunter's tax affairs, an effort that grew out of the investigation into whether the first son was violating money laundering laws in his overseas business dealings. I think that they're actually going to try to put a block to this as well. And again, the interesting part of this is a lot of this is already public record. We've already seen this. This is readily available. But as of right now, they're actually mum on this from Fox News. White House mum on National Archives releasing hundreds of pages of emails about Hunter Biden and Burisma. From Chris Pandolfo. We got some people coming in here. If you're idling and lurking right now, again, remember, we'll look through some of your live chat at the end of the show today here. The Biden White House has so far remained silent as it weighs whether to block the release of a trove of documents from the Obama admin that may contain information about Hunter's relationship with Ukrainian energy company Burisma. You want to know why I think that they're treating Ukraine like the 51st state right now? I think a part of that is because there's more documents, and more of it is damning in Kiev. I don't think there's anything down in the Donbass region. But I think the fear porn is out there to make sure that people believe that if Putin goes back and, he stays in Ukraine, it's making a lot of people on the defense contractor side really, really rich, but it's going to be evil and he's going to destroy your free people. No, I think it's because the documents surrounding Burisma are in Kiev. The requested records consist of 69 images and 282 email messages that were reviewed by NARA and cleared for release. There were 22 related emails that contain information exempted from FOIA requests and are restricted, as well as 75 messages that will be partially redacted if the president permits them to be released. The FOIA requests were filed by members of the press after the Hunter Biden joined Burisma's board in 2014, and we know about the $83,333 a month despite Biden's lack of experience in the energy sector. So it'll be interesting, and again, I'm going to be most interested on whether or not they actually let these things out, whether they let them see the light of day, and I'm not at all confident that they will, but we'll see what happens with this. Let's grab one from The Blaze. Democrats push legislation to block Trump from holding office again because they don't think they can beat him at the ballot box. That's the only reason, by the way, that they would come back out and do something like this, is because they don't think they can do it fairly and squarely at the ballot box. Or whatever passes for fair and square in federal elections this year. Honk honk. A group of House Democrats is backing legislation to prohibit former President Trump from ever holding office again. The legislation accuses Trump of involvement in insurrection and points to the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution to assert that Trump is not eligible to hold office ever again. Yeah, they've been trotting out this tired line since the beginning. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the U.S. or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof. A portion of the 14th Amendment states that we've all seen on Twitter 75 trillion times at this point. Trump, who previously served as president from early 2017 through early 2021, announced last month that he's running for president again. David Cicilline of Rhode Island is pushing the measure, along with more than 36 original co-sponsors. Trump barely clearly engaged in insurrection on January 6, 2021, with intention of overturning the lawful and fair results of the 2020 election. You don't get to lead the government you tried to destroy, Cicilline said, according to a press release. Here's the problem, Cicilline, and something that you have been thus far unable to do for over a year. We're going on 2 years of this bullcrap. See, you found the one little section of the Constitution that fits your narrative. That is, oh, this is the thing that this is the iron stake. This is what's going to get him. The Constitution's going to get him. The Constitution he swore to uphold. That's what's going to get him. And I want to read you the Due Process Clause, which you also have to go through here. See, and we'll go from the 14th Amendment, not the 5th Amendment, for this one. So, in the highlighted part here, you know, again, we go through what they found here. No person shall be a senator, representative, or elector, or president, or vice president, or hold any office if they engage in insurrection. Oh my God! But right at the top of the 14th Amendment, Section 1, Due Process of Law. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens in the U.S., nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. I will, and by the way, if you can get a fair conviction, which I don't think you can, and I think it'll be appealed, but if you can actually get a fair conviction off this, I'll stand right beside you and say, okay, you did your homework, you got the conviction, he can no longer be president. But I don't think you're going to do that. In fact, I think you're going to fail at that as well. In order for you to deprive any person, even the former president of the United States, of life, liberty, or property, or the pursuit of happiness, if you take the Fifth Amendment text, you have to convict him in front of a jury of his peers. You can't just come out and say, that person engaged in insurrection. Our legal process doesn't work like that. I know a lot of people on the left wish that it did, but it doesn't work that way. So that is what we see coming for that. More federal court news coming out. Federal judge says Biden can't yet end Trump-era Remain in Mexico immigration policy. From Tierney Sneed. This one actually surprises me a little bit. I think it's right. I think it's the right decision. But this one surprises me because typically the Supreme Court is the last law in the land. And I thought they said that, no, you couldn't do that. But we'll read from here and we'll see what the exact circumstances are around this. From Tierney Sneed. A federal judge in Texas has put on hold for now the Biden admin's most recent attempt to end the so-called Remain in Mexico program. District Judge Matthew Kaczmarek is pausing the termination of the program, which that was outlined in an October 2021 policy memo, while litigation around that memo continues. The ruling marks a setback in President Biden's efforts to end the controversial Trump-era policy, which sends certain non-Mexican citizens who enter the U.S. back to Mexico instead of detaining them or releasing them into the U.S., while their immigration proceedings played out. An admin official said the Secretary of Homeland Security was well within his authority to terminate the prior admin's program. "We disagree with this decision and we're determining the next steps," the official said. Well, we didn't get our way. The Remain in Mexico program, formerly known as Migrant Protection Protocols, is separate from Title 42, which is set to end next week. That authority, which was heavily criticized by public health experts and immigrant advocates, has largely barred asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border. Well, if the people are actually seeking asylum, most of them are coming through Mexico to get here, so seek asylum in Mexico. You don't have to go down to the same places in the Northern Triangle that you came from. You have the opportunity to come back out and instead go to, I don't know, Guadalajara. I don't know enough tourist spots in Mexico, but I know there are a ton of them. You can go to those places. Maybe do commerce with the U.S. under a work visa. You could drive truck into the U.S. and then return home to Mexico every night if you wanted to. In June, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4. The Biden admin had the discretion to end Remain in Mexico, rejecting arguments from Republican states that immigration law required the program to remain in effect, and granting an initial victory for the Biden immigration agenda in its efforts to reverse Trump's hardline immigration policies. By the way, I might actually move a couple things around here because we're talking about immigration, and I don't know why I didn't put these up at the top when I did, so we'll probably jump down to the bottom for just a moment. Or I'll move them back up to the middle. But the Supreme Court sent the case back to Kaczmarek to consider whether the rollout of the October 2021 memo complied with the Administration Procedures Act, which requires that agencies take certain procedural steps when implementing policy, and how it went about unwinding migrant protection protocols. In light of the SCOTUS ruling, the Biden admin had already begun unwinding the Remain in Mexico policy, according to Gianna Boroto, a senior litigation attorney with the American Immigration Council. Kaczmarek's new order does not command the U.S. to restart negotiations with Mexico about re-implementing the program, raising questions about how the admin will respond from a practical standpoint. Well, they're going to whine, they're going to stamp their feet, they're going to go judge shopping and find another court, and they're going to go find somebody to come back out and say that no, it is illegal to have Remain in Mexico. Just like they've done in every other situation that we've had surrounding the program since the end of the Trump admin 1.0. With that being said, migrants pack Mexico-U.S. border ahead of asylum limits end. From Giovanna Dell'Orto. Thousands of migrants packed shelters in Mexico's border with the U.S. on Friday as an end near to Trump-era asylum restrictions. Ahead of that, illegal border crossings of single adults dipped in November. Some good news, finally, according to a Justice Department court filing released on Friday, although it gave no explanation for why. I don't know, maybe it's because people stopped enforcing it. It also did not account for families traveling with young children and children traveling alone. Migrants are anticipating the end of a public health rule known as Title 42, which has left some biding time in Mexico. Migrants have been denied rights to seek asylum under U.S. and international law 2.5 million times since March of 2020 on grounds of preventing the spread of the pinko pox. Border cities, most notably El Paso, are facing a daily influx of migrants that let the Biden admin expects to grow if asylum restrictions are lifted, Republican-led states have asked the federal appeals court to keep Title 42 in place beyond Wednesday's scheduled end. A decision could come down to the wire. And again, one of the things that comes off with that, and I agree with the Title 42 idea of keeping people over in the other country until their asylum is done, but again, we're running on two different narratives of the pinko pox. On the right side of the aisle, the Republicans are saying that we need to keep Title 42 in place, which was a COVID-era policy specifically denoted to the pinko pox. So we need to keep it in place, but we need to also tell everybody that the pandemic is over. It's done. There's no more pandemic. And this is Schrodinger's pandemic response, essentially. But on the left side of the aisle, with the Bidenites, are doing the exact same thing, but going in the other direction. With the Bidenites, they're coming out saying, okay, well, Title 42 needs to end so we can bring more of these slaves into the country and put them in awful working conditions in a position where they can't speak out because otherwise they'll get deported. So we need to end this COVID-era policy that specifically was designed in relation to COVID. We need to do this. We need to end this. But the COVID is still a problem, and you need to get another booster and stay in your house and wear 25 masks. Both sides are playing both sides of the aisle on this, and it's frustrating. Whereas we could just stick with remain in Mexico, keep them over there until their asylum hearings are done, and stop doing this commie coof crap. But of course you know that these people are going to pack up here for the opportunity that they might be able to come in. Let's talk just a little bit more about the border here. Let's grab one from the BBC. Hopefully Saint is still here because this is his neck of the woods. From the BBC, U.S. sues Arizona over shipping container border wall. We have no author given on this one. The U.S. government is suing Arizona's governor over the construction of a makeshift barrier made of shipping containers at the U.S.-Mexico border. Governor Ducey began building the barrier earlier this year, saying it was an attempt to secure the border. Saint, if you are still here, have you seen this wall? I have a general idea of where in Arizona you are, and this probably isn't too far off from where you're at. I don't know the specifics, but I have a general idea. But in its lawsuit, the government claimed Arizona was trespassing on federal lands. Hundreds of thousands of people have been detained while attempting to cross the border in recent months. President Biden has been criticized by opponents, including Republican Governor Ducey, over his admin's handling of the border crisis. The legal action comes 3 weeks before Governor Ducey's last day in office, when he will step aside for Democrat Katie Hobbs, who has previously said she opposes the barrier. And yes, she is going to go out there and tear it all down. I promise you that. Ms. Hobbs has yet to decide what to do with the containers. She has said that she's exploring all options and warned that removing the containers may be costly. What do you care? You're a Democrat. You're just going to spend anyway. The government is seeking a court order to stop the building of the... No, what? And this is what Katie Hobbs is going to do. Katie Hobbs is going to request federal relief to remove the barriers from federal lands. So she's going to remove them and slam that portion of the Yuma border wide open again. And do it on federal taxpayer dime, on your dime. By the way, the government is seeking a court order to stop the building of the barrier and to remove the shipping containers in Arizona's San Rafael Valley. It cites the environmental concerns associated with the construction, claiming that Arizona has cut down and removed scores of trees, clogged drainage, and degraded the habitat of species listed under the Endangered Species Act. Because yes, of course, before you put up a lean-to shack, you need to check with the government to make sure that you're not going to exterminate some sort of mysterious frog that looks like every other kind of frog, but just happens to live in the place that you're going to construct. The federal government is also seeking compensation to fix any damage caused by the barrier. And Arizona, again, is also ready to assist. Arizona is ready to assist in the removal of container barrier along the border, a letter from the governor's office said. Which, I mean, is this coming from Ducey or is this coming from Hobbs? Arizona officials have responded to federal officials who reportedly threatened legal action regarding the shipping container barrier along the Arizona-Mexico border. The Department of Agriculture and U.S. Department of Interior reportedly made the claims to Arizona officials earlier this week, the letter shows. Arizona's Office of the Governor sent a letter to the U.S. Department of Justice Tuesday saying it stands ready to cooperate with the federal government on construction of a border wall and always has been. The note also says the construction of the container barrier has ceased since previous discussions between the entities. Arizona's border barrier has always intended to be a temporary solution until the federal government erects a permanent solution, which they are not going to do. We do have the letter here. It is 3 pages. So we'll look over some of this here. This is from Annie Foster, the General Counsel of the Governor's Office. Dear Mr. Kim and Restaino, the letter is in response to your December 12th, 2022 letter, in which you state the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Interior intends to file legal action in relation to the state of Arizona's unlawful trespass and construction of makeshift shipping containers barriers on federal lands along the U.S. border with Mexico, as well as the governor's executive order purporting to authorize the same in the letter. You make a series of unfounded or inaccurate claims that warrant a response. Please be advised, Arizona stands ready to cooperate with the federal government on construction of a border and always has been. In August, following a historic investment by the Arizona State Legislature, Arizona began placing shipping containers to protect the state from the unprecedented crisis confronting our communities and law enforcement. The number one public safety risk and environmental harm has come from inactions by the federal government to secure our border. In January 2021, when the federal government abruptly halted border wall construction, our forests and public lands in Arizona quickly became strewn with abandoned clothing and property, and an ever-increasing number of migrants who continue to flow into the state. This influx has resulted in fields of agricultural produce being contaminated, hospitals overflowing, and U.S. citizens not being able to enjoy their homes or property due to trespassers. So this is, I'm guessing, coming from Ducey's office still. Which, and I do understand the sentiment behind this. This was, and again, the reason that they went in and used a shipping container, a temporary measure, a band-aid, to keep Arizonans safe, and this is coming from Ducey's mouth, not mine, but to keep Arizonans safe while the federal government figured out what it was that they were going to do about this. That's why they use shipping containers. They're easy to move in and they're easy to move out. The project was launched to fill the gaps by Ducey on August 12th. Previously, on July 28th, the Biden admin authorized the completion of the Trump-funded U.S.-Mexico border wall in an open area of southern Arizona near Yuma that's become one of the busiest corridors for illegal crossings. Is that 310 to Yuma by any chance? I've actually never seen that movie. I know, you're shocked. I'd be interested. Alright, let's talk Twitter. The title article for this particular episode. The Journos. Doxx not, lest GB banned yourself. Elon Musk Twitter suspends several journalist accounts without notice. From Shauna Chen and Sarah Fisher. A series of Twitter accounts belonging to journalists who cover Elon Musk and Twitter were suspended without notice on Thursday. Musk has vowed to make Twitter a haven for healthy, functioning free speech, he tweeted in April. I hope that even my worst critics remain on Twitter because that is what free speech means. The following accounts were suspended on Thursday night. New York Times tech reporter Ryan Mack, Washington Post tech reporter Drew Harwell, journalist Aaron Rupar. Journalist is a very, very, very loose term for Rupar. CNN politics and tech correspondent Donnie O'Sullivan, Mashable tech reporter Matt Binder, professional loudmouth Keith Olbermann, The Intercept tech reporter Michael Lee, which, by the way, with Olbermann, that actually improves the Twitter experience for all of us because we don't have to sit here and have another video spammed in our feed because Olbermann gets spammed in everybody's feeds, just like JoJo from Jers and Brooklyn Dad Defiant, in which we get to hear, "Well, I'm angry, and this is the reason why. It's because the American people elected Donald Trump president once, and I didn't like that, even though I liked him before he ran for president." The Intercept tech reporter Michael Lee, Voice of America's chief national correspondent Steve Herman. The notice that appears on the now suspended accounts reads, "Twitter suspends accounts that violate Twitter's rules." Many of these reporters' last tweets or stories focused on Musk and Twitter. In response to a tweet about the suspensions, Musk indicated the accounts violated Twitter's doxing policy, which he revealed Wednesday after suspending an account that actively tracked his private jet. Several of the same suspended journalist accounts had allegedly tweeted links to the jet tracker, same doxing rules applies to journalists and everybody else, Musk tweeted. Accounts engaging in doxing receive a temporary 7-day suspension, he said. So, a couple things that are going on with this. Now, some new details have come out about this, including the fact that this is drawing global backlash. I don't want that article here. I want this one here, I think. I do. Gotta move some stuff around here. So as far as this goes, and some of the details that came out about this are because not necessarily that they were doing this on Twitter, but a lot of these people ran off to Mastodon to do this. To keep talking about the jet tracker and posting links to the jet tracker on Mastodon, which I can't believe for a second that Elon Musk is on Mastodon. And if he is, how he didn't get banned from Mastodon instantly for being Elon Musk. They don't need a reason over on Mastodon. If they don't like you, you're gone. But with that being said, I do have mixed feelings about this. Now, again, as I mentioned yesterday, even doxing yourself on my Discord is grounds for termination. End of story. You don't get an appeal either. You're banned, and if you try DMing me about it, I'll block you there. If you do that in my Discord. I take a very, very, very foul stance to doxing. I always have. Because I like people to be able to discuss ideas without fear of repercussions. And I know the names of people like John and Midget B and Seawall. I know their real names. Some of them I know their addresses. I've sent them mail before, or they've sent me mail. I know what some of their jobs are, actually. I could destroy a lot of the people on my Discord. But I don't want to do that because I want them to continue to come in there and talk about important topics and also not so important topics. Midget, I'm talking about you, who does seem to believe that the nation of Israel was incepted in the 40s to specifically make your life a living hell in the early 2000s. In the early 21st century, I should say. We're past the early 2000s already. But I want you to be able to do this and talk about this without fear that this is going to get back to your employer and cause a disruption in your life. And again, that's why the rule is even doxing on yourself. But I'm going to come right out and say, and this is where I would be completely in support of Elon, and I was completely in support of him with the jet tracker yesterday. But now this comes to offsite behavior. Now, if you came in and found out the names of people and then went off to another Discord server and said, hey, look, I found all these people here. And if I wasn't in that server and it came back to me that way, I don't know that I'd be able to go back and ban you. I would have a serious conversation with you and tell you that it's not cool and then warn the people that it happened if it got back to me. But again, it's off-site behavior. And the biggest part for me, especially with it being off-site behavior, is, again, the difference between the Discord and the Jet Tracker on Twitter is on the Jet Tracker on Twitter, that was all publicly available information. On the Discord, for the most part, with the people who are members there, these people are specifically out there with the intent of making sure that their identities stay hidden while they're in their online parlance. And I respect that for them. I still think it's creepy that people want to go and follow Musk Jet around, as many people in the country that want to kill him right now. And I don't think posting where his jet is going is a good idea. But that's also publicly available information in an off-site situation. I have very mixed feelings about this whole thing. I really do. Because there are several different ways that this could go, and I don't think this was necessarily the right way to do it. I think a lot of this was sour grapes, but again, I mean, a lot of us came into this knowing that Elon's not going to be the free speech champion of the world. He's not going to be the one that saves us all. From Archived, from Reuters, Elon Musk's Twitter suspension of journalists draws global backlash. From Sheila Dang, Twitter's unprecedented suspension of at least 5 journalists, that's a stretch, over claims that they revealed the real-time location of owner Elon Musk, drew a swift backlash from government officials, advocacy groups, and journalism organizations across the globe on Friday. Officials from France, Germany, and the UK, and the EU condemned the suspensions, with some saying that the platform was jeopardizing press freedom. Oh, that's rich coming from those 4 countries, plus the EU, or I'm sorry, those 3 countries plus the EU. That's rich coming from you guys. You can still go to jail for criticizing the king in the UK. The episode, which one well-known security research labeled the Thursday Night Massacre, is being regarded by critics as fresh evidence of the billionaire who considers himself a free speech absolutist, eliminating speech and users he personally dislikes. Alex Stamos tweets out, everyone sticking around Twitter because they didn't want to see the space should probably take account of this Thursday Night Massacre and move their main posting elsewhere. You can find me at cybervillains.com/@Alex. Roland Lescure, the French Minister of the Industry, tweeted on Friday that following Musk's suspension of journalists, he would suspend his own activity on Twitter. Well, ironic we're talking about an airplane right now because Roland Lescure, this is not an airport. You don't have to announce your departure. Melissa Fleming, head of communications for the UN, tweeted she was deeply disturbed by the suspensions and media freedom is not a toy. Really? Coming from the head of the communications of the UN, really? That's rich. That is rich right there. Holy crap. The German Foreign Office warned Twitter that the ministry had a problem with moves that jeopardize press freedom. The suspension stemmed from a disagreement over a Twitter account called ElonJet, which tracked Musk's private plane using publicly available information. And I see Grant is saying it's not public information. I would need to see a verification off of that. And all the green checks are telling me that it's publicly available, which by the FAA I believe is true. But I don't know enough about aviation law to confirm that 100%. I just go by what the green checks tell me. And I do look into non-green check verified outlets off air. On Wednesday, Twitter suspended the account and others that tracked private jets, despite Musk's previous tweet saying he would not suspend ElonJet in the name of free speech. So, it's all will they, won't they. And again, I'm not real big on the off-site behavior thing. Now, if they went back and posted and blasted it all over their Twitter, I would say, you got a case. Ban them. You don't like them, you're the owner, it's your site. I don't like it, but you got a case. Do what you must. But it's the off-site thing. It's how Sargon got banned off Patreon back in the day. Off-site behavior. It's how Styx got banned off Twitch. Off-site behavior. And I think that's crap. And I think this is actually all the same information here coming from the Washington Post. And, well, I really don't like Bezos with the Washington Post, so we're going to skip over that one. All right, and more Twitter news. Breaking. New Twitter file shows how federal state governments monitor American social media posts. From Ryan Saavedra. I have not read any of these long 30-tweet releases either, by the way. I know I should, but with the move and being between here and Janesville almost every day for the week that the first ones came out, and then just trying to get my bearings in my new job when the second ones came out, I did not get a chance to read these ones, but I know especially if the Daily Wire has a link to them, I will probably jump up and read the newest ones. And by the way, awesome of you guys coming up here and getting the chat up here, because again, it's been a slow week this week, but again, as more people get used to the new time slot, I think we'll get some more people in here, maybe even people from the further west coast, like Grant, by the way. And I do keep all the names, track of all the people who live chat, so I can read all these names and say thank you at the end of the show, and read some of the stuff that you've got going on today as well. A new drop in the Twitter Files series Friday afternoon shows federal law enforcement officials were working in close contact with employees at Twitter to censor content. Journalist Matt Taibbi said that between January 2020 and November 2022, then Twitter Senior Director of Trust and Safety, Yoel Roth, had exchanged more than 150 emails with the FBI. I bet you at least one of my tweets was in those emails, probably a bunch of them. A surprising high number of requests by the FBI for Twitter to take action on election misinformation, even involving joke tweets from low-follower accounts, Taibbi said the FBI social media-focused task force, known as FTIF, created in the wake of the 2016 election, swelled to 80 agents and corresponded with Twitter to identify alleged foreign influence and election tampering of all kinds. Federal intelligence and law enforcement reach into Twitter included the Department of Homeland Security, which partnered with security contractors and think tanks to pressure Twitter to moderate content, he continued. Taibbi noted the newest documents discovered throughout the course of the investigation showed the FBI and DHS were regularly sending social media content to Twitter through multiple entry points pre-flagged for moderation. So from the sounds of that, it looks like they were putting stuff up there to test the moderation tools. Taibbi showed examples of the FBI reaching out to get action taken on specific tweets. Taibbi, hello Twitter contacts. The master canine quality of the FBI's relationship to Twitter comes through this November 2022 email in which the FBI San Francisco is notifying you it wants action on 4 accounts. Twitter personnel, in that case, went on to look for reasons to suspend all 4 accounts, including Froma, whose tweets were almost all jokes, including civic misinformation. Just to show the FBI could be hyper-intrusive in both directions, they also asked Twitter to review a blue-leaning account for a different joke, except here it was even more obvious that Claire Foster PhD, who kids a lot, was kidding. Well, Claire Foster PhD is a parody account. And I actually know the person behind Claire Foster PhD. And I'm a little bit surprised. I got to send this article off to her to see if she knows that she's being mentioned by this. Anyone who cannot discern obvious satire from reality has no place making decisions for others or working for the feds, said Claire Foster, PhD, when told about the flagging. By the way, I'm not going to spill the beans, but a lot of you, Claire Foster, PhD, the person behind that account, has been on this channel before. That's the only hint that I'm giving you. The woman who does that account in the background, I've had on Ed's World. And the Red and Ed Show post Elaine as well. When we had the transition between then and when we turned to KTZed Redemption. She's been on the channel multiple times, actually. In an internal email from November 5th, 2022, FBI's National Election Command Post, which compiles and sends on complaints, sent the San Francisco field office a long list of accounts that may warrant additional action. Which, and again, I mean, there are some things about the active part of the FBI being involved in this I don't agree with. But one of the things to remember when you're going to social media is, on most cases, your posts are public to the world. In Facebook, I think it's just public to your friends group, and like Twitter, it's public to the world. Anybody can go back and access that unless you locked your account down. And even then, the FBI can get back into it and access it anyway. So this isn't, to me, as huge of a drop, but I haven't read all 30 tweets. I probably do that off the air, but I mean, we know the FBI is going out there to try to subjugate free speech. All right, let's talk about New Orleans. Mayor LaToya Cantrell issued a statement on selecting new New Orleans Police Department superintendent. Because she's got to do something right now because she's facing down impeachment. LaToya Cantrell issued a statement Tuesday regarding the selection of the next chief of New Orleans Police Department. My initial step towards finding a replacement for Chief Ferguson includes using this time to assess all options, have important conversations, and create meaningful dialogue with a wide range of stakeholders who are equally invested in keeping our city safe, said Mayor Cantrell, from existing leadership within the NOPD to members of our esteemed business community. The recommendations, advice, and counsel I have elicited lends a helping hand towards making an informed decision that is best for the residents and visitors of this great city. Well, I won't go there right now. As I said during my State of the City address, the fighting must cease. We must collectively come together as leaders to build a stronger, safer, and more prosperous New Orleans. I welcome and look forward to even more community involvement as we move forward in identifying the next leader of the New Orleans Police Department. Superintendent Sean Ferguson's last day as the Chief of Police is December 22nd. And a move coming off this because the crime has come rampant out of New Orleans, plus the whatever the hell that hair pick was that they decided to have in the middle of the city. That's just completely bizarre. LaToya Cantrell is facing down an impeachment. From Fox News. New Orleans recall efforts, Mayor LaToya Cantrell's lavish trips scrutinized as city becomes murder capital. Again, I'd like to go take a trip, especially being as close to the Mississippi River as I am. Like, if I can't see it because of the direction this window faces, but if I step outside and look west, I can see the Mississippi River from pretty much where I'm sitting. And one day I would like to go up into the Twin Cities quickly, not stay there for very long, start at the top, and drive down. I'll probably drive down the west side, and drive down 61 and whatever that becomes, going into Iowa, and all the way down through Missouri. Get quickly through Missouri, obviously, because I can't stay there. Cruise down the Mississippi River one side, and then go on and get on the Great River Road and come back up the other side. That would include a stop in New Orleans, but I don't want to stay in New Orleans for very long either because, after my depression lifted, I actually enjoy living now. From Fox News, though, from Luis Cassiano. Organizers are working to recall New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell, say they're confident enough voters are dissatisfied with her leadership amid an uptick in violent crime and questionable trips and expenditures that have raised ethics concerns. The recall drive began airing television ads last month, and mailers have been sent to voters across the city asking them to sign a petition containing their name on a postage prepaid cards that can be sent back at no cost. At the issue is the city's violent crime rate, Cantrell's expensive international travel on taxpayers' dime, and lackluster city services, such as insufficient garbage removal and non-working streetlights, said Eileen Carter, Cantrell's former social media manager who partnered with Belden Nooneyman Batiste, a former New Orleans mayoral candidate, to file the recall petition over the summer. In addition, critics allege Cantrell has been absent during several crucial city events and meetings. The national term quiet quitting, that's what our mayor has done, Carter told Fox News Digital, referring to the term for employees who do their bare minimum in their jobs. Our mayor literally won't say the word crime. She has disassociated herself from crime. She refuses to be involved in all. Yeah, even when we looked at the statement that she put out, all she talked about was all the leadership, and our business leaders counseled me, and the people in law enforcement counseled me. She would not say the word crime in this statement. As of Monday, New Orleans Police Department has investigated 248 murders. This year, a police spokesperson told Fox News Digital, in 2021, the city had 218 killings, the most since Hurricane Katrina devastated the city in 2005. Yeah, definitely don't want to stick around there for very long. If I do go down the river and back up. We're going to have to see a more significant drop in gas prices before I do that, but I would like to see that. I'd like to go down there at some point. I would just like to remain living when I do so. Some of the problems with this, of course, is, you're not going to get a tough on crime, dare I say, conservative person in that. It's New Orleans. You're going to replace one corrupt Democrat with another corrupt Democrat, and on top of that, you're also going to get the stigma of trying to recall a black mayor. But we'll see what happens. Man, the chat is rocking right now. Slow to start, but it's rocking right now. And the last one, and I will give my let's go and my gripe about this, because I have both, as I usually do. From the Daily Wire, Pennsylvania County set to perform 2020 election recount next year. From Daniel Chayton. More than 2 years after the 2020 general election, a hand recount of paper ballots in 2 races in that contest in one Pennsylvania county is scheduled to take place next year. Up to 40 employees of Lycoming County will go through nearly 60,000 ballots, examining the races for President and State Auditor General in a process that will begin on January 9th, according to Penn Live. One observer from each major political party is permitted, but photographs will not be allowed as the recount takes place in the county-owned building. Well, I think that we should be able to allow photographs, but county commissioners voted along party lines 2-1 in favor of a recount for the presidential contest and one statewide contest in October. The rules were adopted Tuesday. All of this followed a group of citizens, many of whom were aligned with the Conservative Patriots group, submitting a petition with 5,000 signatures representing 7% of the county population in favor of a recount, North Central Pennsylvania reported. So we're going back and we're doing the 2020 thing again. And I understand that people want answers. I really do. But here is the thing. The only purpose this has right now is to do legislation. Come out and say, we recounted, we found the problems, and we're going to make a law that says that, okay, now we're going to try to fix this. That you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to be able to vote by mail or in person for that matter. We need this kind of credentialing system to do so. That's really the only avenue that we have at this point for this. As I mentioned before, once Biden put his hand on the Bible and mumbled through his inauguration speech, "Hey, I promise to pull the thing, man. So help me that guy that I'm gonna meet soon, because I'm 82 years old. My brain don't work real well. Come on, man." Once that happened and people interpreted what came out of that speech as what they wanted to hear, there was nothing that could be done anymore. The race was over. Joe Biden was the president without a constitutional mechanism to overturn the election. Now, of course, they could have impeached, remove, and give it over to Kamala. They could do that, but there was no mechanism to make Trump the president anymore. I'd like to see what the recount is, and the only other issue that I have with this is typically with a recount, you're just recounting the same ballots, whether they be good, bad, or otherwise. You're usually not submitting them to any more scrutiny. But, I mean, we'll see what happens if the numbers don't turn out completely right or something happens with this. We'll see. Oh, that's going to be a hard one coming up at the end here. But I'm going to read it because I promised. That's my promise on Fridays. We read the live chat. Some things cannot get read because of YouTube terms of service, but I think that will fall just under the term TOS. So with that, it's that time. It's time to go back and look through the live chat, which you guys do have up on your screen now. And I will continue to I'll take it over from the middle screen, so I'm looking more at the camera than over onto this screen here. But before we look into who chatted today, first we're going to look into who chatted during the week. And we did have kind of a busy week. Monday was the busiest day. People excited for me to be coming back and hear the echo in here. We will have to do some fixing because I'm not in a carpeted room anymore. That's all hardwood or faux hardwood floor. But Monday, we had Ron Helton, Randy Crush Saga, Blind Fear, Grant was here. Nadie Murillo had asked me to go over, I think, a Taylor Swift song. Arbolt, my mom was here, and Izzy Busy, 8907. On Tuesday, our top chatters were Quest Fanning, Sully Blue, Ron Helton, Randy Crush Saga, Arbolt, and Blind Fear. Wednesday was the slow day. Our top chatters were Ron Helton, Arbolt, Randy Crush Saga, and A Gaines P. And yesterday brought us Beat Me Up Mr. Scott, Randy Crush Saga, Arbolt, A Gaines P, and Ron Helton. Today, let's see what you guys are doing here today. Grant is here this morning. With this morning. I'm so used to doing contemporary in the morning here. This is my first week back. Grant says, Timcast doesn't start until 5 p.m. Pacific time, which I think is 7 your time. That is correct, by the way. But again, I mean, it's harder to compete for the after work crowd than it is for the early work crowd. But I'm still, again, because I love doing this and I love the fact that you guys are here, I'm going to continue sitting in this chair doing this every weekday. Saint is here, says, yay, my dollar will be worth as much as a peso by next year. Well, you got to use some of the valuable dollars to make a very good purchase. Congratulations, Saint, for that. Ron Helton is here. Evening, J. Edgar, fellow Ed Heads, Grant, Saint. Went to the county seat to pay taxes this afternoon. Yeah, I bet you that was a interesting sight. Ron Helton paying taxes. Did anybody die in your county seat? So I went to do my store runs so that I wouldn't waste gas. Grant asks, how much do eggs a dozen cost at your local store? We can still get them for $2.99 here if you shop around. The going rate is $3.65, but, and this is in Wisconsin, we do have Quick Trip available, and Quick Trip actually does do a very good job of keeping their staple goods down, which includes milk, butter, and eggs. So if you go to Quick Trip, you can still get $2.99 eggs. And I'm seeing $6 a dozen eggs. I mean, even the 18 counts aren't that high. I think going rate for 18 count is 5 and some change right now. I think it's 5.15 currently. Did you buy a Trump NFT? No, I did not. Ron says the eggs at Aldi's were $4.69. Walmart's were over $5 a dozen. I didn't buy any. Good for you. Don't buy them at that price. Punish the people who are putting them out there for that price. And I understand they have the feed costs that go with them. But let them know that you won't pay that price. Ron says, I'm in central Oklahoma. We were discussing it in a server I'm in, and someone said $6 in California. Woof. No thank you. Ron says there are some local stores that are over $6 for the large eggs. Gaines is here and says, I've long wanted to wrap my property in shipping containers, double stacked, and they would make the perfect leave me the F alone message. Very nice, Gaines. Very nice. Ron says Elon is a fraud, which he is. That is fact check true. Beam me up, Mr. Scott says, Heyo, Edheads. I hate Comcast. I want to sue them for predatory business practices. I think a lot of people do. I like Spectrum, actually. They stayed relatively low in price, and they did offer me to drop the price back to promotional rates as soon as I move, which I've got to get in contact with them, actually. Grant says Elon Jet's location is not public information. Elon is actually privately registered, so you can't track it. The guy tracking it broke the privacy code by tracking plane location and matching the privacy code with the places Elon went. I do need to look into that because, again, with the FAA involved, I do think that that might still be publicly available information. But I don't know enough about aviation law to say that for certain. You might be right. There's a very good chance that you're right. Mr. Scott says you can follow tail numbers on ADSB. Grant says Tim Pool went over it in a video. If you try to look up Elon's location, you can't. You can just piece it together from public information, but that goes beyond just reposting public information. Okay. I will hate watch Tim Pool just for that. Right, you can track tail numbers, but if you try to look up tail numbers, they won't tell you which one is Elon's because he purposely listed it privately. Ron's got a link here. It says his Gulfstream reg number is N628TS. And Mr. Scott also points out you can tell where a jet is, not who is on it, which is actually an important distinguisher in this. Ron says his plane is currently on the ground. Grant says the Sweeney Guide basically stalked Elon's appearances and all tail numbers to crack which one is Elon's and then constantly posts where it is. Ah, the magic of weaponized autism. Ron says there are also websites that let you track all the ships on the waters around the planet. Yeah, we've looked at some of those here. Especially when they had the Suez Canal jam up in Egypt. Mr. Scott says, Vessel Finder. I followed the Cornelia Marie around on it. That sounds like an interesting follow. What does she ship? Mr. Scott says, I don't think any crab fishing boats even went out last season. No, I think they had to have. Because like Ron says, there's a lot of seafood here in the stores. Mr. Scott had a crappy day today. Apologize for that. We'll see if the evening news can make things better. Grant says, I think an analogy would be if you couldn't look up where people live, but someone stalked you to find your address and put a camera on the sidewalk and had it post to the internet when you come and go. Mr. Scott says, I had to pay Comcast $140 for what I understood should have been $30 for about 6 months in internet. Lame. Gaines says, New Orleans, what can you say? It's the armpit of the earth. Never been there. Ron says, my internet is over $50 a month and it's only running 15 megabits per second. That's highway robbery, dude. Grant says, how dare you insult the hair pick? It's a symbol of black culture or something. Then he says, well, the people voted for her. They must like the crime. No, I think they got a pig in a poke. But I believe her term also started. When did her term start? Let's look that up. So the New Orleans mayoral term is 4 years renewable once. So, and I don't know when her term ends. Let's actually look at this. The Arbiter of Information, Wikipedia. She was on District B of the New Orleans City Council from 2012 to 2018. No, I'm not going to give you $2 right now. So she was just re-elected by a wide margin in 2020, securing 65% of the vote. But this is a re-election too, because she was voted in 2018. She went in to replace a term-limited Mitch Landrieu. So let's see. And one of the things that I guess I can't say that she was probably a BLM hire for this. But I think that played into her policy here because, yeah, she's been there since 2019. Or 2018, rather. Because they vote on odd years and then they inaugurate on even years, it looks like. So I guess that means her term will be up in 26, because it's 2 4-year terms. But they're ready to get rid of her now. Saint says, New Orleans is good for 2 things. Proving the 13 stats true that have to do with 50 as well, and crawfish. I have never eaten crawfish in my life, by the way. It stands to reason that I would love it, because I do enjoy seafood, especially shellfish, but I've never had an opportunity. Grant says, Twitter file part 6 dropped today. The title, part 6, Twitter, the FBI subsidiary. Yeah, we talked about that. I think it was while you were on a break, Grant. Ron says, taxation is theft. The county built a new admin building and raised my taxes another $60 a year. Ron says the reason eggs are that expensive is demand. Millions of chickens died of the bird flu, and it takes about a year to repopulate the flocks. That is correct, actually. Did you cover the release of the thousands of JFK documents? I haven't covered the actual release of them. I did talk about the stuff that was redacted by the Biden end. We talked about that. But no, I didn't actually cover the JFK documents. I do want to sit down and read those before I sit and cover them, because that would interest me. But I know that there's going to be stuff that the government still doesn't want us to hear 60 years later. He has the option of leaving some of the information about his plane private, but he has to request it. Ron says, I like the French Quarter. You can really sense the history there. I've never been there. Again, I'd like to try it. I really would. Head down. I mean, there are places along the Mississippi that I don't want to try, obviously. But I do want to go down one side and up the other. Because I was born on one side of the Mississippi River and grew up on the other side. What they say, over 15,000 pages? That will take a while to read. Yes, it will. All right, we're done. The first week back is in the books, and I'm gonna see if we can get some blankets out here or something to damp up some of the sound. I know Quest wants to send over some sound panels. I don't know if I want to hang them is the problem, because it usually takes nails. And again, I don't think I'm gonna be in here through the summer. I'm gonna come right out and say that I think that if I can't get it in March, which is my goal, I think that by July, because I don't want to turn 39 in this place. I can tell you that right off the bat. But with the extreme expense of the move, even with the pay raise, that we may have to put that off until like May. But yes, there will be, and it'll be nicer the next time I move, because I won't be doing it across the state. It'll probably be across town. I actually have my eye on a property. It's a little rough. It's in a neighborhood that I wouldn't have initially gone back and done so, but the price is right. And it's really close to where I work now. So we can continue to have a very, very quick margin between going to work and me coming home and doing contemporary, which is my ultimate goal, of course, is to keep doing contemporary and make decisions that make contemporary easier. Always has been. But with that, yeah, we'll see what happens with that, and we'll continue to track that and see where that goes as well. But yeah, I'm not going to be in here for that long. So we can either live with the echo for a few months, or maybe get some blankets or something up here to... You can use old cardboard egg cartons. A buddy did that for his music room until he could buy some acoustic wall tiles. Oh, interesting. They didn't look that bad after he painted them. Yeah, the thing is it's holes in the wall. This is what I need to avoid. That's always the big kicker on things, is holes in the wall. But we're out of here. We're done. Should we throw some outro music up? I think so. I think we should. Maybe we just listen to the Hyrule Temple song. I like this mix of the Hyrule Temple song, by the way. I really do. I say that about a lot of things on this playlist, and I'm going to be honest, I love this playlist. Let's give them another shout out. Oh, that's right, I can't right click, paste. Guys, make sure you go check out what Game Shop's put up here for copyright free for us. Let's head out of here. Let's be done. All right, so thanks everybody for a great first week back. We had a little bit of a slow news day, but we were able to get through everything and get you shuffled off to see great programming like the Porch Boys both nights that they were on, and get me out and get me some nice dinner here. Probably not going to be a game stream this weekend, because I am going to 9 times out of 10 run down and get the last few things out of my old apartment, and then start the legal battles on trying to get out of the January rent, because, well, there are a lot of things that went on with that, and I got basically screwed by the property management company. But that is a story for another time. We're going to head out of here for the day. We'll be back here on Monday night, 6 p.m. Central Time, for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary, talking about what's happening over the weekend, and hopefully getting some good stuff gathered up here for that. Definitely looking forward to it. I am so glad to be back with you guys here, reading the live chat and hanging out with you guys and just getting down to the news. So if you like what you see, there's donate buttons up there. Hit the like button. Yeah, I don't usually say that, but for the first week back, we'll get one in here. Tell a friend, tell a few friends, get some over here. Stick around if you're on the Twitch side. We're going to go raid somebody, and we will see you next time over on Contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.